All right, 6 o'clock. The Final Four is set. National semis from Glendale, Arizona on Saturday. NC State and Purdue, followed by UConn and Alabama. The Boilermakers favored by 8.5. The Huskies, the odds-on favorite to win the championship, an 11.5-point favorite. Women's tournament continues tonight. Two more teams looking to punch their ticket to the Final Four. LSU and Iowa, followed by UConn and USC, which will be at Moda Center. Both games are on ESPN. Red Sox over the Mariners yesterday, 5-1. The M's open up a series at T-Mobile Park tonight against the Guardians. First pitch at 6:40. Hancock is on the bump for Seattle. Trailblazers continue their 7-game road trip tonight in Orlando against the Magic. Tip-off at 4. Game days at 1:30 here in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Tamani Kamara is out for the rest of the year with a cracked rib. Rip City Mornings with Dwight and Chad is coming at you right now. Well, once again, I would like to curse the name of Justin Myers. He is the reason that I'm sitting here in this chair again this morning. But it's a better day because I'm joined once again by my partner, the Godfather Dwight Jaynes, who is back after a 2-week hiatus. It's great to see you, Godfather.
I never thought I'd say this, but it's great to see you, Chad. I'm happy to be back.
Well, we got a lot of things to get to today. Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports going to join us coming up at 7:20. Who won the weekend? We'll get to at 8 o'clock, and there are some great candidates. I haven't had a chance to talk with you about Otani and the situation with his interpreter, or shall I say ex-interpreter. We'll get to that coming up at 7:45. And we're going to talk some basketball, but we want to talk some football as well because the draft now is basically a month away, and we're excited about all of the news and topics surrounding the draft. We could have 4 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4, which has never happened before in the history of the draft. How crazy is that?
That shows you how valued quarterbacks are. Because I don't know if anybody, after the number 1, I don't know if anybody knows anything about how well these guys are going to do as pros.
I would agree with that. There's only one guy that I'm sold on, Caleb Williams. Outside of that, I have no idea. I have a good idea of what I think is going to happen, and we'll discuss that. But once again, whether it's the NBA or it's the NFL, no team has come up with the perfect formula to be able to look at these players who are coming out and know this guy's definitely going to work. There are the occasional prospects that you know or can't miss, but for the most part, there's some guesswork involved. And that's scary business when you're talking about big-time millions. And if you make the wrong pick, it can set your franchise back. Crazy.
Yeah, it's funny, too. Even some of the can't-miss prospects, particularly in basketball, they miss. Even they're not foolproof.
Yeah, no doubt. That was fun. I enjoyed watching the basketball over the weekend. We got a couple of good women's games coming up tonight. LSU and Iowa is going to be great because of the rivalry there with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Two very powerful coaches in the women's game. So that game will come up tonight. And then, of course, we've got the game here at Moda Center, UConn and USC. In fact, what irritates me about the women's game is this whole debacle that played out yesterday with the NCAA somehow allowing games to be played at Moda Center because they had no idea that the three-point line on each side of the court was offset. It wasn't measured out properly. And the coaches decided to go ahead and play the game with that disadvantage because it would have taken too long to be able to get the court fixed in time. They vowed to have it fixed and corrected for tonight's game. But what an embarrassment. And what I hate is like Portland does a good enough job on its own of creating headlines that are negative. And we hear about it all the time. I have family members that call me up from out of state. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Because they see the news and they're like, it's crazy there. I'm like, yeah, it's definitely crazy in Portland, and we like to keep it weird here. But Portland had nothing to do with the NCAA and their band of clowns.
Say that again, because people have to understand it wasn't our fault.
That's right. Let me clear this up for you. It was not Portland's fault. The Trailblazers had nothing to do with it. Burke Cold and Jody Allen did not measure off the court. We had nothing to do with it. Because how it works is, and you'll notice this if you're going to the game tonight or if you've been to NCAA tournament games here in Portland or anywhere else, when you walk in, you don't even know who the home team is because they cover everything up. Everything is covered. They don't want any signage. It's all littered with the NCAA logo, their mission, their sponsors, everything. So they're in control. Once you book it, they come in and take over, and they set up the whole arena and the court the way they want it done.
They make the floor. That
Yes.
floor is theirs. And after this is over, they'll pack it up, take it to the Final Four, or I don't know, the other one will probably be the one taken, but they do the painting of it. They do everything. Your job here in Portland is just set it up, and it was set up correctly. It was just painted wrong, and that's inexcusable. How does that happen, Chad? Or do you think it happens in the men's game, or do you think this is what happens in the women's game?
Well, unfortunately, this is something that would never happen in the men's game. And for a sport that's wants so badly to be recognized, and you've got great star power. Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, two examples of great young women who are great at their craft and are great stars and ambassadors for the game. And you've got these new fans coming in because of Caitlin Clark and everyone else, and they want to watch your games. And so on the biggest stage, when you have a chance to shine a light on what you do and what you do best, you can't have these type of moments. And once again, it's just an example of the NCAA just really being a group of buffoons, because you've got this big-time game, and you have a situation where one team gets an advantage because they have a shorter three-point line, which, by the way, they added up the games played with the offset court at Moda Center, and the teams on the shorter side of the three-point line, 4% better, 33% shooting from downtown. 4% in basketball from three-point range is a big advantage.
Yeah.
So I just think it's an embarrassment for the game, but it's the NCAA. And what I loved is I think I was watching ESPN or some sports program last night, and they added in a little comment. The NCAA is going to put together an investigation to figure out how this happened.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Just when I need another NCAA investigation, it'll wrap up in about 2 years, and they'll finally have their findings as to what happened here at Moda Center with their stupidity. Unbelievable to me.
Well, Chad, you know what it reminds me of is the big controversy a few years ago. Remember when the players from Oregon complained about the weight room situation for the women as compared to the men.
Yeah.
And it was a joke.
Yeah.
They showed the weight room. There's like a set of little barbells or something. You know, it's like nothing.
No, it's embarrassing. Can you imagine a college football game being played where one end zone is 8 yards deep and the other one's regulation at 10 yards deep? They're not going to play the game. It's like, no, fix that, and then we'll go out and play the game. But that's an embarrassment. So I felt bad for the girls, because it's just stupid that the NCAA would screw it up that bad. I don't know how you do that, but someone's got to lose their job over that one.
Yeah.
Who was the idiot that was responsible for this?
And it's funny because I know when you paint those things, there's some sort of template that you use.
Yeah.
I don't see how it actually happened. But the one thing I know for sure, nobody from the NCAA is going to step up and claim responsibility for it. That's for sure.
Yes.
They're going to try and keep the narrative going that, well, that's Portland. I don't know if we're ever coming back there again.
There needs to be some type of probation, or maybe one worker will step up and have a self-imposed ban of a couple of games for the failure to get the three-point lines correct. You know, maybe there'll be something ridiculous like that we see often with the NCAA. So, anyways, tonight, UConn. How about, let's see, who is it? NC State. They get the men's and women's team into the Final Four. That's pretty awesome. And UConn is on the verge of doing that too, possibly tonight. I think that's pretty sweet. And I got to admit, NC State, I don't know how this happens, but this is what makes the tournament special. NC State was on life support and required a miraculous shot to get through the ACC tournament, which they won. Had they not won the tournament, they would not be in the NCAA tournament. And yet here they are on a winning streak and on fire, and now going to the Final Four after a team that was on life support. How do you explain that? We had a full season to know what they were, and then all of a sudden they catch fire at the right time. And here they are in the Final Four as an 11 seed. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's what you get with a one-and-done tournament.
Yeah.
You know, that's why people say, well, the NBA ought to try that. And they did with the mid-season so-called tournament. But it doesn't always bring the best teams to the championship. That's for sure.
All right, we'll get to more detail at 6:45. But you just got back from a 2-week vacation, and you were in the Amazon. I got to admit, when I hear and think of The Godfather being on the Amazon River, that brings up some very interesting images. But
you don't think of Tarzan flying through the jungle when you think of me doing that?
No, I know what you are. You're a guy that likes fine food, fine dining, and the best hotels. So
correct.
thinking of you being on the Amazon River is crazy. But where all did you travel to on your trip?
Well, we traveled we started in Brazil, down the Amazon, a couple of stops in Brazil on the Amazon, and then out into the Caribbean where we stopped at French Guiana, which you don't know the country, but when I explain this, if you ever saw the movie Papillon with Steve McQueen, um, it was the story of a guy who escaped from like the worst prison, worse than Alcatraz. That's Devil's Island. Okay, that's where we were. We were on another island right across from Devil's Island. You can't go to the actual island even now, but we saw it and saw the movie again just to prep us for what we're going to see. But we went from there. We were in Barbados, we were in Antigua, and we finished up in Puerto Rico and flew home from San Juan.
What was the most interesting wildlife that you saw on the trip?
Well, we saw a lot of monkeys on Barbados, but it's funny. Nancy actually hiked through the rainforest for a while, and I didn't make that hike. It's like a 4 or 5 mile hike, and it's like, thank you, but I'll stay on the ship for that one and go to the pool.
Yeah.
But she didn't see anything in the jungle because she said this is the trail that they take all the people through, and animals are smart enough to not be there. They don't go anywhere near that. So everybody was disappointed. No pythons, no big gorillas, no anything like that. But the rainforest, Chad, is unbelievable. I mean, we're talking about a tree they're just right next to each other. It's a complete canopy. When you're inside that, you can't see the sun. It takes forever for rain to get through to the ground because there's so many trees. It's unbelievable. And the Amazon River is like muddier than the Mississippi. If you've ever seen the Mississippi, it's very muddy.
Very.
And this is even worse. But it's huge. Largest river in the world in terms of volume. In other words, depth, width, dumping all this dirty water into the ocean.
So a little bigger than like the Tualatin River then. Slightly?
Yeah, about 100 times bigger. Yes.
This is disappointing because no anacondas, no pythons, no alligators.
I know. Yeah.
Well, that's no fun.
I know. I was looking forward to some of the nasty animals.
Well, I saw a video pop up on YouTube yesterday, and it was down in Florida. There was a golf cart being chased by an alligator.
I saw that. Yeah, big alligator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it looked like he was just enjoying a nice leisurely stroll through the golf course, and then all of a sudden a cart comes by, and he opens up his mouth and chases after it. I almost had a heart attack just watching it, and I wasn't even there. But I was trying to imagine you being chased down by a crocodile or alligator or some type of massive animal. That's what I was hoping for. And
yeah.
instead, just a bunch of monkeys.
I would turn and fight him, Chad. I'd pop him right in the nose. But when we were seeing the monkey, it was really interesting. There were a whole bunch of these little monkeys, and watching them, like he reached. They're so human-like. Reached down and pulled this rock up so that he could reach under and find these bugs that were under the rock.
Yeah,
it's like, gosh, he's pretty smart little critter.
They're pretty sharp, aren't they?
Yeah. I saw more critters on the way into work today. I realized, I better slow down on a couple of these back roads getting to the freeway because there's animals running in front of my car all the time, and I don't necessarily want to hit a raccoon or something.
I know. Well, that brings me back to why I hate Justin Myers. I was driving into work this morning, and doing so when one half of your brain is doing one thing and the other half is doing another, and your vision is blurred because you're still trying to figure out what the heck's going on. I don't like it, man. I don't like it. I don't like the way I feel right now. Awful.
Every time we do this show, I have more admiration for Justin doing it day after day after day. The only solace is how good you're going to feel when it's over and you go home and you got the rest of the day.
Yeah, I have more admiration for Brendan because he's the one that has to deal with Justin each and every morning. So that's where I come out on that.
About time someone cared about little old me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, Brendan is the Corvallis/Oregon State of the radio business.
Yes.
Not enough
It's
respect.
very true.
It's very Rodney Dangerfield-like.
Yes.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk a little hoop. We'll focus in on Caitlin Clark. What do she and Scoot Henderson have in common? We'll discuss next here in the Rip City Mornings. All right, what do Scoot and Caitlin Clark have in common? That's what we're going to try and figure out over the next 15 minutes here on the show. We got a big rematch in the women's tournament tonight. It's going to be LSU and Iowa. So you got the showdown with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, which is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to that matchup. I want to see how it shakes out. And you got a lot of big personalities in this game, including LSU head coach Kim Mulkey, who is she's crazy.
Yeah.
And she gets the most out of her team. And what I enjoy about LSU is that, and I think it was Reese who was talking about this over the weekend, they enjoy being the villain. They like coming in and having people root against them and go out there and perform and play their game. And they really get off on that, which I think is cool. And, of course, Caitlin Clark right now is the biggest star in the game. But you've been impressed with, obviously, Clark, but more importantly, their coach, Lisa Bluter, who's doing a good job of getting them to play team basketball, something we're seeing with UConn on the men's side as well. But what are you noticing with Iowa, aside from Caitlin Clark shooting the logo threes? What are you seeing with their system and the way they play?
Well, first of all, Chad, I'm most impressed with you remembering Lisa Bluter's name. Folks, Chad's got an incredible memory. I'm so envious. I'm a guy who can't remember to turn my mic on sometimes. So this is a guy who remembers everything. But I think the Iowa coach, I think she's terrific. I think she's done a great job of maximizing what Caitlin Clark can do. Not only her shooting, but she's an incredible passer. I think she's terrific. I think that's going to be her niche as she moves up the ladder into the WNBA. She is a great passer, but you've got to put her in situations where you can let her use that. In other words, a lot of actions away from the ball in the half-court game. A lot of back picks, a lot of backdoor plays, just a lot of actions where you can get some cutters and open people for her to find on her way to the basket or when she's double teamed out front. So, and then they've got a terrific transition game. They run really well, a system fast break where everybody pretty much knows where they're going to be. She's amazing in the middle of a fast break, Chad. She hits people on the run in tiny windows. I think that's her real skill. She's terrific at that. But I watch that, and I think, I think the biggest skill Scoot Henderson will have in the NBA is passing. I'm not sure he's ever going to be a knockdown, dead-to-rights shooter. He's going to be better, no question. But he's not going to be Damian Lillard when it comes to shooting the ball. It's just not going to happen. So let's put him in situations where we can maximize his shooting ability, the way Phoenix always did with Steve Nash and the way Iowa is doing with Caitlin Clark. That means you got to get out and run more. You've got to have a good fast break that is systematic, that you work on, not just something you stand on the sidelines and yell at your players to run. I remember coaches all the time, Maurice Cheeks, run, push, waving them to run. It's not that easy in the NBA. You have to know what you're doing, and you got to practice it. The Lakers, Showtime Lakers, practice forever just on getting the ball out of the hoop, getting out of bounds, and throwing that baseball pass up court. They practice it forever, and that's how you run. Iowa does that, and they put her in that situation. The Blazers have to get to that where they're running more, and they've got to create situations in the half court where he has open cutters, open people to throw the ball to, because I think he's going to grow into that guy who can do that.
With Clark, she's known as a shooter with her range because she's shooting a lot of logo threes, but you don't see that being her mark in the WNBA.
Well, Chad, I don't. And here's the thing. I'm worried about the logo three thing, the whole idea of it. Look, Damian Lillard and Steph Curry, those guys have proven they can make those shots, okay? So let's just not try to be them until you can hit 35% of those, okay? When you can hit 35% of those, there will be times, not too many times, but times where that's useful, okay? But I'm seeing in high school all these kids trying to crank up long threes. It's really not the way to go. And Caitlin Clark can get better threes than that. She doesn't have to take those. Those are for the media. That's for the highlight film on ESPN, okay? She doesn't need that shot. And I don't know that that's going to go real well for her as she moves up the ladder.
I was watching a extended highlight package just on her passing, and it reminded me of some of the guys we grew up with, whether it be MJ or Kobe or now it's Steph Curry, where they get all the attention for their ability to fly through the air and dunk, or in Steph Curry's case, shoot the three. But the one thing that you don't see is all the work that goes into the fundamentals. And I think Caitlin Clark, what I've recognized is her handle, her fundamentals, the way she passes the basketball. There's so much work and time that's put into that aspect of the game to where they're fundamentally sound. And I wish that you could somehow create that connection with youngsters, or in this case, maybe young girls out there who are playing the game,
Mhm.
to understand the work that goes into creating those
Yeah.
fundamentals
Yeah.
to where you become sound. And the rest of the stuff is just gravy, right? Being able to shoot or have deep range and stuff. But her fundamentals in terms of how she operates the offense, her handle, the way she's able to find teammates on the move, like, that's critical, right? But it doesn't get the attention because no one sees all the work that goes in behind the scenes on creating those fundamentals.
Yeah, I think the handle is so important for kids. Left-handed, right-handed, you got to be able to. You might be fast. You got to be able to bring the ball with you when you're being fast, And that I see this all the time. And I had a discussion with Terry Porter a few weeks back about. He was talking about guys who stood 30 feet away from the basket going between their legs back and forth several times. It's like, okay, you can do that. I see that. But do something to get by somebody, cross them over, do something. And I think kids have to learn the handle first before anything else, because if you can't handle, you're going to be so restricted on the floor. She is so solid in all the things you want to teach a basketball player. Male or female, she's got that stuff. She's got it all. And that's why the other things fall into place for her, because she's got a solid platform to work from.
All right, Scoot Henderson, no matter how you slice it up, I think we can all agree that this first year for Scoot has been a disappointment.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
for the fans, disappointing. I think the team was probably shocked to begin the year because he had a good camp. And then all of a sudden, game one, and then you had the issues right away. He's missed time because of a bone bruise in his foot and also the adductor strain, inconsistent play, turnovers at a alarming rate. The shooting percentage has not been there, and you see a lot of issues with his game. I noticed, too, that he doesn't really know what to do when he drives into the paint. He leaves his feet too soon sometimes, Godfather. Sometimes he'll drive in and get stuck, and he tries to force a pass. He turns it over. And obviously he's worked on his shot, but the shooting percentage is not there. One thing I'm certain of with Scoot, between now and however long he plays basketball, he's not going to face a more important offseason than the one that he's facing right now.
Yeah.
Meaning they've got 8 games to go in the season. When that season is over, I'm assuming this is how it worked. The team will have an exit interview with him. They'll express the different things that they want him to work on, and then it's a matter of him and his team going about that work throughout the course of the summer so that when he hits camp, he is ready to take that next leap. And for Scoot, right now I'm not panicked, but if we don't see dramatic improvement at the beginning of next year and throughout the season, and if we're here at this point next year having the same conversation about Scoot, then you would hit the panic button. Like, he's got to make sure that his work is done in a fashion that will allow him to take that next jump.
Right. I totally agree, Chad. And you don't need to see a finished NBA player next season. What you need to see is vast improvement on what we've seen this year. And I think this offseason is pivotal to that. And I think your assessment of what we've seen from him this year is true, especially finishing around the basket. He's been able in the past to be able to use his little reverse layup to keep the shot blockers away. And he can get to that shot, but he hasn't made them as much as he should because he's under duress. You know, there are people who are getting to him. He's not accustomed to length coming after him. He didn't see that in the G League. He didn't see talented bigs coming after him at the rim. And that's something he's going to have to get used to. And I think it's critical too, Chad, that he gets somebody with him in the gym all the time this summer who's a seasoned developmental coach, whether it's Dame's guy, whether it's David Thorpe, whether it's one of these guys known for developing NBA players. I think it's critical that he work with a guy who's been down the road with players who needed the polish to play in the league, who know how to go about doing that. It's not going to happen with him going into the gym by himself. he's got to have a mentor in there.
Yeah, and right now his mentor, his coach, is his dad. And I don't know anything about his dad. I don't know his dad's background, what he's capable of, how good of a coach he is. But what I would do, or what I would hope is that he and his dad can sit down and say, okay, what do we need to do this offseason, and who do we need to bring in to be able to accomplish these tasks?
Right.
And open it up. Don't limit yourself through pride or arrogance to bringing in whatever is necessary to make it happen. Make it a team. Bring in whatever is necessary, because he has to make that jump to get to where he wants to be, which is to get that next contract and solidify himself in the NBA. So don't spare any expense not to bring in somebody that can help you get to that level.
Yeah, he's got enough money to pay anybody to work with him. And I think if you love your son, now forget he's a basketball player. He's your son.
Yeah.
All right. You want what's best for your children. Yeah. So you bring somebody in, because there's no way. And look, I'm like you. I have no idea if his father, I'm sure his father's a good coach. I mean, he's been working with him, and he turned him into what he is now. So he's probably pretty good, but he's not prepared to work with NBA players. It's like it just won't work. And so you got to have it's no time to trifle with that kind of stuff. You got to bring in the best, and you can afford it. Heck, the team would pay for it anyway. Bring in the best guy out there to work with him. You can't take chances here. This is his career on the line.
Yeah, it really is, because the Blazers are going to be in a situation where if we're having the same conversations about his game that we're having right now, middle part of next year, then the Blazers are going to be stuck in a situation where they've got to make plans for the future to try and determine who's going to be on the roster, who's not, who's going to be a part of this long term. And they've got 3 guards right now. So at some point, they'll have to make a decision. And if they have question marks remaining about Scoot and his lack of progress at this point in time next year, that's a big-time problem.
Yeah.
They need him to hit. They may not get another pick that high in the draft. There's no guarantees. So when you get those players like a Shaedon Sharpe at number 7 or a Scoot at number 3, those players have got to cash in. Or you end up becoming like so many teams in the league, like the Knicks or whoever, where you miss on player, and it continues to set you back because you can't find the right guys to build your team around. That's a problem.
Yeah, because he was brought here to be a generational player, the foundation. And you can tell just by the way they've hyped him during the season and all. I mean, this guy's the number 3 pick in the draft. This is a guy you have high expectations for. And the team's going to have to, I think, take a part in this and even step in and do an intervention on the whole thing of working with your father in the offseason. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, how does that work? I mean, from my understanding, the team, they allow players to work with whoever they're going to work with, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to mess with that. It would be considered uncouth to be able to demand that they work with someone. They're going to let him choose, right? That's going to be his choice. But the team will go and suggest, here are the things we want you to work on, right? They come up with a prescription for the player, right? For everyone, is that how the exit interview works?
Yeah, of course.
Like, hey, we want you to work on these items. Is that how it works? When they sit down with the player?
Here's your off-season prescription for what ails you. Here are the things you need to do to get better.
Yeah. That's what the team wants.
Yeah, I would imagine his father will say, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Yeah, no problem. We'll work on that.
Yeah.
You can't have that.
All right. Dicey. Critical, man.
This is what you're going to trust your future to?
Well, it's pressure, man. It's pressure because he's got to do it now. Like
Oh, you get a week off when the season ends. If you really beg, 2 weeks off. After that, you're back in the gym.
Do you buy into the idea that him being 19, coming into the league at the point guard position it's really hard at that age to be able to master that position? I think the two guys, someone was showing me this at the game last week. Let me think of the players. De'Aaron Fox, Colin Sexton. If you line up those 2 guys next to Scoot, the numbers in year 1 almost identical.
Mm.
There have been a number, even Steve Nash, Gary Payton to a degree.
Yeah.
There have been guys who get off to they're late bloomers at the point guard position.
Yeah. Nash was, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Scoot could be in the same boat where it's just going to take him a little bit of time to get it. And then once it clicks, then he's going to take off and become great.
I think that's the case. I do think that's the case. But by the same token, you can't just sit here and say, well, in another year I'll be better. No, another year of working hard, you'll be better. But you can't just go to the Bahamas for the summer and then decide you're going to be better.
Yeah. No, and that's my reason for optimism. By all accounts, from everyone I've spoken with around the team, his work ethic and receptiveness to coaching is positive. Like, this guy works hard, he cares, he listens, and does not carry some type of arrogance as a youngster in the NBA. Like, this is a guy that wants to work. And so because of that, with his natural God-given abilities, that's my reason for optimism with him to be able to shake this rough patch in his rookie season, to be able to come out and play better. And also having less injuries, more continuity, better players around him is going to help his game out as well. I mean, when you're on the floor, I mean, they started 3 straight games with 5 rookies, which had only happened once prior in NBA history. It's hard to have success when you're surrounded by guys who are going through the same thing you are, which is trying to figure out what the heck they're doing out there.
Agreed. Yeah. I think, Chad, the hardest thing he might have to do this summer is have that conversation with his father. Dad, you've been great. It's been great. But I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to hire this guy because he's proven he makes NBA players better.
Yeah, and your dad can still be a part of it.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be blackballed for coming in. He can be a part of it. But
sit in the gym and watch every day on what we're working on. And then maybe on the days that this guy, workout coach, can't be there, you can work me out.
Yeah, I just want a guy that has years and years of experience of working with high-level NBA players that have a proven track record of success to be able to get the guy where he needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there are those guys out there.
Oh, yeah.
They're not cheap, but who cares? Because you're playing for your next contract.
Yeah.
So whatever it takes, get the job done. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We'll come back, and Dwight's going to take us behind the scenes on his 2-week excursion down to the Amazon. And at 7:20, Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, will join us. We'll talk tournament. We'll talk NFL draft. So weird to hear your own voice in your ears. That was like a long echo there.
I don't know what that was.
I never want that to happen again, because every time I hear my voice on radio, I'm like, ugh, I sound like that? That's disgusting.
Remember when you started, they say, go home and listen to the tape of your... No, I could never do that.
No, sound checking's the worst.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Rip City Mornings, Dwight and Chad in for Justin Myers, who we hate right now. But he did leave me a bunch of coffee, which is nice. start the music like 30 seconds before we need to be out to make sure we get out on time. All right, Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, is going to join us coming up at 7:20. We'll talk NFL draft. Then we'll get his take on the tournament. And you know what's weird about UConn? If they win the Final Four, that's going to be their 6th championship for the men's. Duke has 5 championships. UConn is going for number 6, and yet it seems like no one ever talks about UConn being the dominant basketball program that they are, and they've done it over an extended period of time because Jim Calhoun got it done, and then Kevin Ollie got it done, and now Dan Hurley is getting it done.
Yeah.
Who wants to go to UConn?
Yeah, you ask the female players the same thing because they've been loaded for years in UConn. I don't know.
The winners in UConn. I've never been to Connecticut. I'm guessing it's freezing booty there.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It does. It's geographically, there's nothing there for you.
No, great basketball legacy, and Dan Hurley. We'll get to this a little bit later in the show, but they play well too. You were mentioning how the Iowa women play and how they're well coached. Hurley, it's like they don't rely on the three. They've got a system. They run the system, and every guy buys in, and they're just annihilating competition right now.
Well, part of the reason Duke gets so much attention is that there's a lot of hatred there too.
Yeah.
So that helps get them attention.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's just as many haters on Duke as there are, people who are fans of Duke.
There were a lot of people enjoying what NC State was doing to them yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Maybe not as much as DJ Burns, but there were a lot of people enjoying what was happening.
Yeah.
Because Duke, no one likes Duke.
Yeah. Mike, quick take on DJ Burns.
Yeah.
He's a thick Zach Randolph.
He does look and move a lot like Zach Randolph.
He does.
I've heard people talk about this. Why not have an NFL team reach out to Burns at his size and with his ability? Why not turn him into the next Julius Thomas or take your pick of guys who played basketball in college and went on to become a great tight end?
Mm-hmm.
It would just seem that a guy with that type of athleticism and size, it may not work in the NBA, but on the football field, I would take a chance on a guy like that.
Absolutely.
A raw talent.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than watching a guy dominating a game and then enjoying it and talking junk along the way. Like, it's just the best. And he knows it. He knew that they were doing a great thing for America to take out Duke. Because for years, and I loved watching Duke when I was younger because I was a Leitner fan.
Yeah.
And they had 5 guys that I grew up watching. They were on the team every year.
A lot of guys hated Leitner, too. Don't forget that.
Yes, I enjoyed watching it, but Duke has been hated for years because they're considered rich, old money. They win all the time. Perfect dynasty in college basketball, a team that you want to hate on.
Yeah.
And so I thought NC State getting over on them again and doing them that way in the tournament was great. That was fun. That was fun to watch. And DJ Burns was, well, he'll probably be one of our candidates for who won the weekend coming up at 8 o'clock. Now, your trip. So give me some highlights on your trip to the Amazon because a lot of people, like I've never been to South America. I've never been to the Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of it's like some sort of a movie or something. Like that's a wild vacation right there.
Well, the one thing is it was a cruise on a very nice ship, Viking Cruise Lines. And I
all-inclusive type deal where you get everything provided, food, beverage, everything.
Yeah. And good food, pretty much as you want. And 2 swimming pools, therapy pools. They have a sauna and a steam, and they have a snow room. Snow packed high in it. You go from the snow room back to the steam room or the sauna, back and forth. Yeah, seriously.
So the cold-hot therapy. So like a snowmaker, like you would see on a ski slope where they make snow.
It's actual snow, yeah. It's pretty incredible. So it's not like we're wearing pith helmets hiking around in the jungle or something.
No, that's great. When I lived up on the mountain in Colorado, we had a friend who they had the hot tub outside.
Mm-hmm.
And we get snowstorms. So you would sit in the hot tub, jump out, roll around in the snow, and jump back in the hot tub.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but when you're fresh out of a hot tub, the cold isn't as cold as you would think, and then you jump right back in.
Yeah, it feels good. It's invigorating. So anyway, that sets the stage. But we there's this is classic. We fly into a town called Manaus in Brazil. Now it's a town of over 1 million people. It can't be reached by land. You fly in or you boat in, but you can't drive there. That's how remote it is. But it's a big town. And so we fly in there. We make a couple stops on the way out. The Amazon is an incredible sight, but it's kind of like seeing the Grand Canyon. You see it and you think, wow, that's pretty big. That's pretty amazing. But then that's kind of it. I mean, okay, we see it. I'm not going to swim in it. Looks pretty nasty. And it is pretty nasty from what I understand.
Well, I wouldn't swim in it just on the basis of what might be in there to come after me.
Yeah. But upriver, a little further up than where we were, I'm sure there's raw sewage and everything else.
Do the locals swim in it?
No.
Okay.
No, didn't see any of that.
It's just
No,
disgusting.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And but really dirty. I mean, gosh, the color of it's amazing. But anyway, so we got out in the Caribbean, and then things got a lot better. The places we went, I mean, Barbados is really cool. Also, I never knew this, Chad. We crossed the equator coming back north. You get a certificate when you cross the equator.
You do?
Yes, an official. I've got it framed at home. Yes.
Did the water swirl down the drain in a different direction on the other side of the equator?
Well, our toilet flushed straight down, so I couldn't really. It's not like we could see it circle. I was going to check for that, but no, I did. That's the first time I've been south in the southern hemisphere.
That's amazing.
I'd never been to South America.
So, like when you go to a Mariner game for the first time or a Blazer game, you get a certificate saying this is my first game. You get that when you cross the equator.
Yeah, it's official. It's signed by the captain of the ship. It gives the date. It's pretty official looking, like you actually did something.
Like you were baptized.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So I got that going for me right there. So anyway, we ended up in Puerto Rico, which is a very cool place because it's a U.S. territory,
Yeah.
So you do the customs thing when you come into Puerto Rico. You don't have to do it when you fly. We flew from there home. We went through Charlotte and then back to Portland. Horrific travel day, by the way. But it's just interesting. And there's a lot of USA in Puerto Rico, although the dominant language is still Spanish. But by the same token, most people seem to speak English.
So you didn't feel totally out of place in Puerto Rico?
No. I would go back to Puerto Rico. I think it's a cool place.
All right, we'll keep things rolling here on Rip City Mornings. Dwight and Chad in for Justin Myers, who will be back tomorrow. When we come back, we'll take a look at the Final Four. We got to talk about Dan Hurley. The Hurley family's crazy, like the Harbaugh family.
Oh, gosh, yeah. It's funny how those two families are so much alike.
And it shows the importance of coaching in the college game, both football and basketball. So we'll get to that. And then Frank Schwab talking NFL draft, among other things, coming up at 7:20. It's Rip City Mornings here in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, it's now 7 o'clock. Chad here. The Final Four is now set. National semi from Glendale, Arizona, coming up on Saturday. It's NC State and Purdue, followed by UConn and Alabama. The Boilermakers are an 8.5-point favorite. The Huskies, an 11.5-point favorite. The odds-on favorite to win the championship. Women's tournament will continue tonight. Two more teams looking to punch their ticket to the Final Four. LSU and Iowa at 4, followed by UConn and USC, which is at Moda Center. Both games are on ESPN. Red Sox over the Mariners yesterday, 5-1. M's open a series at T-Mobile Park tonight against the Guardians. First pitch at 6:40. Hancock gets the call for Seattle. Trailblazers continue their 7-game road trip tonight in Orlando against the Magic. Tip at 4. Game day at 1:30 right here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Bad news for Tamani Kamara. Cracked rib. He will miss the rest of the season. We're going to talk with Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, coming up at 7:20 on Rip City Mornings. All right, before we get to the men's tournament, talk a little Dan Hurley. I want to play this clip from Texas women's coach Vic Schaefer.
Good old boy.
I love this guy. When you're growing up in Oklahoma, when I hear certain people talk, I'm like, all right, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that language
You've
right
heard
there.
that?
Heard that, been there, done that. I've got a lot of family down in Texas and Oklahoma, but I like Vic Schaefer. And unfortunately, he was having to talk about the situation at Portland with the NCAA's mess up with the three-point lines. One side of the court's longer than the other side of the court. Hey, idiots, how long have you been doing this? And this is your crown jewel of women's basketball, and you have this? What an embarrassment.
Finally getting some attention.
And I'm coming to the defense of Portland, dang it. Get off our backs.
Yeah.
Portland, the city of the Trailblazers, none of it had anything to do with the NCAA's gaffe here. It's all in the NCAA.
The fine people who work at Moda Center, who work their tails off, by
Yeah.
the way, they had nothing to do with this. Not their fault.
It's not their fault. Not their fault, but the NCAA has a long list of disasters. They get destroyed every time they go to court right now. They lose every lawsuit. Their mishandling of NIL and the transfer portal, disastrous. Their longtime lie about student athletes and withholding money where they could have prevented the situation we're in right now, but they didn't because they're slow moving on everything. Their investigations, which take 2 years, and then they drop sanctions on a program long after the coach who committed the violations is gone. Their whole operation and existence is a question mark right now.
Yeah.
This is just another example of their ineptitude and their stupidity, and it's embarrassing. And Vic Schaefer was talking about the three-point line. Take a listen to this guy. He is a good old boy from Texas.
The way you jumped in, it seemed like it was a choice not to tell the players about the three-point line. Did you kind of not want that to be in their heads?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no point in talking about it. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it was, like I said, it's, you guys are going to make a big deal out of it. It's a shame, but it is what it is. And I don't think anybody wanted to draw attention to it and put the thing off for an hour, you know? I mean, and at the end of the day, I don't know that it mattered.
Is it disappointing at all to you that we're having to spend half of your press conference right now talking about the three-point line instead of talking about your team?
Well, I hate to say this, but I have a lot of colleagues that would say only in women's basketball. I mean, it's a shame, really, that it even happened. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm not the culprit here. You guys are asking me about something that I had no control over. So Vic Schaefer ain't the problem. But anyway, it is what it is. So it's a shame. That's all I can say.
There you go. It is. It's a shame.
Well, not only that, it is what it is.
It is what it is. It is a joke that you have to answer these questions after a game.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to console my girls who just lost a tough battle, and here I am talking about the NCAA being just completely inept on how to handle a basketball court, the most basic of the basic. Hey, did someone measure up the three-point lines? I'm not sure. Well, why don't you go get on that?
Yeah. Before we ship this floor off to Portland, let's take one last look at it, maybe step off these measurements here and see what's going on.
But the best part, too, they got an investigation going to figure out how this happened. You're an idiot. You guys are all dumb. That's how it happened.
But the money quote was only in women's basketball.
Only
And I think guys involved with women's sports can really identify.
I have a lot of colleagues that would say only in women's basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, it's embarrassing. You're
Yeah.
a crown jewel, and you're finally getting the attention that you've been desperately craving for your sport, and you've got this debacle going on.
Mm-hmm.
Most people see that and think, what kind of a clown show is going on there?
Yeah.
What? So you played an actual tournament game with one team having a shorter three-point shot than the other team? Well, both teams get to play on each half of the court, so it kind of evens out. Really?
It's
So
a
dumb.
Bush League deal, I'll tell you that.
Can you imagine Nick Saban?
Oh, God.
They're lucky it's Vic Schaefer and not Nick Saban. There are certain coaches that would just melt down
Yeah.
and just go crazy on that type of situation. What a joke. It's really, again, Portland, this is the most important point. It had nothing to do with Portland.
Yes.
It had nothing to do with Portland being weird. It had nothing to do with the city council being weird. It had nothing to do with the Blazers, Moda Center, none of that.
I
It's the
like what you
NCAA.
said earlier, Chad. You think that Bert Cold was out there on the floor measuring this off and then painting it?
Yeah.
You think?
But that's
I-
what
I
Blazer
doubt it.
fans will think.
Yeah.
They'll
I-
somehow rearrange it to blame the Trailblazers. They had
Yeah.
nothing to do with it. This is
Yeah.
all NCAA. The NCAA is a joke. They're a joke. They have been for a long time, but this is another example.
Mhm.
Like women's basketball, like I actually want to watch this game tonight. Like you're bringing in fans right now with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all the star power, and you do this. It's in a tournament game. You're trying to decide a championship. This is not rec league basketball here, for crying out loud. This is not intramurals, right?
I think I'll be watching Kim Mulkey a lot just to see if she goes ballistic, if she falls behind or loses the game. She will not handle that well.
How would she have handled a 3-point line being offset?
They're lucky it didn't happen to her.
Yeah,
oh
she
my
would have gone
God.
crazy.
Yeah.
She scares me. I like her. There's something about her that I'm weirdly attracted to Kim Mulkey. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'm just going to say it. There's a lot of things in my life I'm not proud of, but there's something about it. I'm just going
It
to say.
says a lot about you, Chad.
I'm
It
just
does.
saying. There's just something about it's just weird. I'm a weird person. What can
She's
I
a
say?
psycho.
I know. I know.
That's what appeals to you the most, right?
Yeah. It's like some people I just watch, my jaw just drops. I'm like, whoa. She's getting paid millions to be her. Like,
Oh, God.
only in America.
You would love to meet her, have dinner with her,
I just like to
whatever.
sit down and have a cup of coffee and just have some conversation with Kim
Yeah.
Mulkey. See what makes her tick. I would play hard, though, because I would be scared. Like, that's a coach
Yeah.
where it's like, you're going to do it my way or else. Who knows what's going to happen? Very interesting. So we'll see how it shakes out. I do like this matchup tonight. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, that's going to be – they understand what's going on. They're going to try and put on a show tonight. The Final Four is set. So we have an 11 seed, a 4 seed, 2 1s. I want to start with this, UConn. We talked a lot about Iowa, but their team ball, the way that Hurley gets them to play,
Yeah.
they're not just beating teams, they're destroying them. They had like a 30-0 run against Illinois. Dominant basketball we're seeing from UConn right now. And I spoke with the sports book director down at Spirit Mountain. I always like to get his feel on who they're rooting for. He's like, anyone but UConn.
Yeah.
A lot of people piled on UConn to win the tournament beforehand because I think people realize they're probably the best team. So a lot of people are piling on, but UConn looks dominant. But what are you seeing from them in terms of their team ball that you like?
Well, a lot of things, Chad. I'll tell you the one thing, though. I have a lot of admiration for coaches who can sell their players on playing good team defense. Their team defense can be suffocating. And you can tell they love that. They love playing that way. And that isn't easy to get players to commit on the defensive end like they do. And they know where each other is. They know where they're supposed to be. They have responsibilities, and they live up to them. I think that part is very impressive. But then on the other end, so unselfish. Move the ball, move bodies, play the right way, get good shots. Not going to try and bury you under an avalanche of threes. They can beat you all different ways. I think if you wanted to try and slow them down, they'd beat you that way. If you want to run with them, they'll beat you that way. It's just one of those. It's a great example of how teams can be better than the sum of the parts. I mean, they don't have a bunch of NBA players. They have guys who will play in the NBA, but I don't see Cliff Robinson out there. Kemba Walker's not out there. They don't have high first-round picks, or not that Cliffy was, but they understand how the game's supposed to be played. I think it comes partly from the fact that his father was a longtime coach. Granted, a high school coach, not a big-time college coach, but those kids grew up. Bobby and Dan grew up hearing all the principles of how to win basketball games. They've heard it since they were old enough to listen, and they've taught their teams well.
He reminds me, the Hurley family reminds me of the Harbaugh family. Bobby Hurley was like Jim Harbaugh, played in the NBA, was a great college player. Harbaugh played in the NFL for 15 years. They're both a little bit crazy, and they run hot. They're a different type of breed in terms of a coach. And then you have Dan Hurley, who is kind of the forgotten brother that a lot of people didn't know much about, similar to Jim Harbaugh, who started out as a control coordinator, right? Quality control guy.
Yeah.
And then worked his way into an elite coach and was able to get a championship. And now we're seeing the same thing from Hurley.
And temperamentally, pretty much the opposite of Jim, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Cool, calm, collected.
Yeah.
No, very buttoned down.
Yeah.
Whereas Dan Hurley,
he was crazy, but he's calmed down a little bit with time.
Yeah.
He's not. Bobby Hurley's still crazy, but Dan's a little bit calmed down compared to what he was earlier.
And I'll give him credit. Dan will say what's on his mind too. He's not. He will speak out.
No, he's good like that. But here's a question I have. Zach Edey is the latest player that we see in the tournament dominating, that people go bonkers about, and they start talking about being an NBA-type player. We saw it last year with Drew Timme out of Gonzaga, right? Guys dominating in the tournament, and you try to figure out what they're going to be in the NBA. I mean, you've scouted for NBA teams before. I'm just wondering with Edey, I just don't see it translating to the NBA because of the way the game is played now. Like, Zach Edey away from the basket is a complete liability on defense. How do you make that work in the NBA?
It would be very difficult. You have to find a team that has a player he can guard. That's the big problem, is him going out on the floor defensively. Because I think offensively against any team, you're probably going to have to show him double teams because he's really good at the low block. He can score. And this is the kind of player that pre-3-point line would have been consensus number one pick. You are always looking for that low post center who could score because it was only twos. So the closer you got to the basket with your two, the better chance you had of winning.
Yeah.
You're going to shoot better.
Yeah, the new age big now that everyone's looking for is the Chet Holmgren or the Wemby, guys who can block shots, defend the pick and roll, and then contest at the 3-point line.
Stretch fives, I call them. That's what they are.
All right, when we come back, we'll focus in on the NFL draft. Is there going to be 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 4 picks? We'll get some tournament thoughts as well. Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, is up next. All right, good morning. Dwight and Chad in for Justin Myers, who will be back tomorrow. And one of our favorite guys to talk to from Yahoo Sports. He's on X at Yahoo Schwab, and he covers a little bit of everything, which is what makes him interesting. It's Frank Schwab back on Rip City Mornings. Frank, good morning. I really appreciate your time. Before we get to football, I wanted to ask you about the tournament. You know, it's hard to imagine this, but UConn is going for title number 6. Duke's got 5 championships. UConn's going for number 6, but yet it feels like no one ever talks about UConn and the dominance they've had in my lifetime playing basketball. What's your take on what you see with Dan Hurley and the Huskies right now?
I mean, it's pretty amazing how it's gone from different eras, too. I mean, from Calhoun, and then they had the really, really strange title team in 2014 with Kevin Holly, who that team, anytime you write about, you know, this is the formula for winning a championship, and you need to rank here and there, you always have to say, well, the one exception is 2014 UConn. But whatever, they won a title, so great for them. And then, you know, Danny Hurley comes in, and he's just done a great job. This team is absolutely dominant, and it's hard to see them losing. And I know, look, if 1991 UNLV lost in the Final Four, and 2015 Kentucky lost in the Final Four, then 2024 UConn can lose in the Final Four too. But it's just remarkable. They just keep winning by double digits to keep covering these big spreads. They're everything you want in a college basketball team. And at some point, I mean, they're going to win. If they do win, we're going to talk about them historically. Like, where do they rank? Are they better than that Florida team that went back-to-back? Are they better than the Duke team that went back-to-back? And it's just remarkable what they've done over the past few years to build an absolute powerhouse in college basketball.
One other question about them, Frank, that I've been curious about. They've been able to recruit players, talented players there to play team basketball through 3 head coaches now to win. And they're doing the same thing through 1 head coach on the women's side. What is it about Connecticut that they can get people to go there?
I know, right? I think winning just kind of leads to more winning. I mean, that's how it goes. You want to be a part of a winning program. And I think you put it well, especially with Hurley. And I mean, on the women's side, they're just unbelievable. They've just been one of those 3 or 4 programs that just dominate the sport, I mean, for decades now. But on the men's side with Hurley, I think he's done a really, really good job of not just recruiting talent, but recruiting guys who fit. That is a team. They have everything you want. It's not just like, you know, you look at that Duke team that lost yesterday, and you kind of say, well, they just got a bunch of guys, and you know, they hope that eventually they figure it out. But I think UConn takes a lot of care in, okay, we need this. We need a good wing. We need a dominant big man. We need a guard that can distribute. And I think they find all the pieces to play the style that Danny Hurley wants to play. That's huge. They're not just – Kentucky's another team. That they just recruit the 5 best guys, and they don't really think about team fit. And you can see that in kind of their results lately, whereas UConn is really cognizant of, let's get the best team in here. And you can just see it. They bring everything to the table you'd want in a college basketball team. That's why they're so dominant. And that's why they're going to stay dominant. I don't see them going anywhere. I know that the names are going to change and all this, but you know, you talk about, you know, what it is about Storrs, Connecticut, that people want to go there. It's to be a part of a winning organization. And now, you know, I mean, you talk about them going for their 6th title, whether they win it or not. I think you have to talk about UConn now as a blue blood. We talk about like Indiana as a blue blood. Indiana hasn't done anything since 1987. I mean, it's UConn's far, far, far better of a college basketball program than them. They're better than UCLA. They're better than, I mean, they've kind of graduated into this, you know, blue blood category where they are one of the reliable brands in college basketball year in and year out.
All right, now I'm going to show you my Northwest bias, Frank, as we talk football and quarterbacks. There's 2 quarterbacks, Penix and Nix, that are both talked about as day 2 guys. And I'm just curious your take on, first of all, let's talk Penix. What makes him a day 2 quarterback? What separates him from those other guys?
You know, I like him a lot. I think he just got, you know, I mean, when they hit the playoff and he played so well, he got a lot of buzz. And I think NFL teams weren't that impressed. They weren't, you know, this is a top 10 guy. No, the medicals are a big deal for him. But I like him as a player. I think that he brings a lot to the table. I mean, good arm. He's a really smart guy. You could tell he processes well. I like him. I like him as a player, but I think he goes kind of behind. And then, Nix is just I don't see him. Look, I'm based in Denver. I'd be shocked if the Broncos haven't moved up to draft a quarterback if he passes them at 11. I mean, they need a quarterback, and he is in this really loaded class. I mean, clearly a guy who should go in the first round and early in the first round because teams desperate at quarterback are going to look at him. The success he had in college is remarkable. I mean, he's another smart guy who really knows what he's doing on the field. So, I think both of those guys. I think Nix is the more. I mean, a sure thing. That's a misnomer, and nobody's a sure thing in the NFL draft. But I think that he's the more reliable investment. But I like Penix, and I haven't given up on the thought of him being a really good starting quarterback down the road. I mean, I like both of those guys. I really, really enjoyed watching them in college. I'm excited to see what they do in the NFL.
Frank, you mentioned Denver. I'm a Broncos fan. I used to live in Denver. Do you buy into the smoke that they're looking and will be aggressive to try and move up along with Minnesota to have access to J.J. McCarthy, one of those top 4 guys?
Yeah, probably, and that's the conundrum the Broncos face. I mean, look, I was just, before you guys called me, I was doing prep for our podcast today. Me and Jason Fitt's going to do that, and we're going to go over AFC team needs. And I'm, just studying and got to Denver and realized they need everything. That franchise got bad in a hurry, and it's not just a quarterback situation. The quarterback situation is obviously a problem, but you look at they need a tight end, they need a receiver, they need they need defensive help in the secondary. They need everything. So how can you justify trading a bunch of draft capital to move up to 4 or wherever you're going to need to move up to grab J.J. McCarthy? It's a hard sell for me. And I get it. Quarterback is the center of everything, and you need a quarterback to start your rebuild. But, boy, if I'm the Broncos, how are you going to get better if you can't have, draft capital to build depth? There's so many holes on that roster now that, yeah, you can move up and draft a quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. You better be right. You better be right. You can't be wrong about that because if you're wrong about quarterback and you've given up all the draft capital you need to because Minnesota there's a reason they got a second first-round pick, obviously. We know that. So, you look at the price of moving up, and I don't know roster-wise if the Broncos really can do that, but they also need to figure out the quarterback situation. They're in a bad way. The Broncos, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. The only thing that's going to save them is Sean Payton's a really, really good X's and O's coach because roster-wise, they have a bottom 5 roster, maybe a bottom 2 roster. It's really gotten bad in Denver.
All right, thank you for that assessment. It's as bad as I thought it was. That's really nice. All right, so with J.J. McCarthy, I mean, from the people you've spoken with, how do you explain his meteoric rise in the draft?
It's one of those things where we always talk about that, right? He's rising in the draft. He's always been, I think, pretty high in the draft. It's just, draft analysts are getting around to that. And I think that teams really like what he brings to the table. He does everything. He's a good, solid, do-everything quarterback. He's not necessarily as dynamic as a Caleb Williams or anything, but, you can really see what he did for that Michigan team. Just a good player that checks a lot of boxes. I think the NFL's always been pretty high on him, and just the draft world's kind of catching up to that now. I think that he does. I don't think he slips past 4. I mean, it just like buzz on him is so strong that, look, if I'm Arizona, I sit there and I take Marvin Harrison. I love that kid. I think he's one of the best receiver prospects I've ever seen.
Awesome.
But I understand you're going to get a lot of offers from desperate teams like the Vikings and the Broncos who are saying this is our guy. If he even lasts, I mean, there's no guarantee that he won't go 2 or 3. I think that the NFL is just higher on him than everybody realized 2 months ago, and now everybody's starting to catch up and say, yeah, the NFL really, really likes what J.J. McCarthy brings to the table because he's just a guy who checks just about every box you want. He maybe, again, not dynamic. He's not this, uber prospect. He's not John Elway or anything like that, but he's a guy who you could see being a really, really good top-end starter in the NFL for a long time.
Frank, how many quarterbacks are going to go in the top 6 or 7?
I think probably 5. I mean, maybe 4 for sure. And then we just get down to does a team feel the need to? Does it seem like the Broncos feel a need to move up for Bo Nix? I think that's the only question on where the fifth quarterback goes. If you're the Broncos sitting there, and maybe the Vikings have made the move for J.J. McCarthy, you might just sit there at 11, and I think they're at 11, and say, well, who's moving ahead of us? We're just going to sit there at 11 and take Bo Nix. We don't need to give up anything. So I think 5 in the top 11. Let's put it that way. I think that we're going to see a quarterback-heavy draft because there's a lot of good quarterbacks, and there's a lot of teams who just are desperate at the position and need to make a move. Even if you're the Broncos, that's the thing. The problem for me, and maybe it's just a mental block, I don't know, but you're taking the fifth best quarterback in the class, right? Like, I mean, what are the odds that all 5 of these guys are going to hit? And it doesn't necessarily mean that the fifth best guy can't be the first best guy, but you're still investing in the fifth best quarterback in a draft class. That's scary to me, and to think that he's just going to be a superstar right away. But they're going to have to do something. And obviously, a Bo Nix, if he is the fifth guy off the board, heck of a pedigree, heck of a college resume. So it's going to be interesting. But, yes, it's going to be a very quarterback-heavy draft.
Well, it's fascinating, too, along with your point about Denver. You can make the same case about New England sitting at number 3. They need a quarterback, but that's a roster that arguably could be the worst in the NFL. They need help everywhere. So, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe look to take a haul, move back, and you can continue to load up on other parts of your team, right?
I agree, but I just don't think you can – where do you move to and what quarterback do you get? I think if the Patriots – and I totally get where you're coming from, and I do agree on some level, but let's say the Patriots move down and they move down – like Broncos. So you move down to Broncos. You get the 11th pick. All of a sudden you don't get a quarterback out of this draft. I mean, where are you then? I mean, at some point you need to address the quarterback situation. We can go back to the Broncos. They've been trying to do it since – March of 2016 when Peyton Manning retired. It could be a long haul to do that. And I think if you're sitting there like the Patriots are with that third pick, and unless you really just are not sold on Drake May or J.J. McCarthy or whoever is, the guy who's there at 3, I just think you take the quarterback. You're not giving up any extra draft capital. You figure out that position, and you move on from there. But it's going to be – there's going to be a lot of teams offering a lot of picks to move up into the top 3, and it's going to be enticing for them. And I wouldn't blame them. Let's put it that way, because you are right. The Patriots really, really talent poor. They have done a terrible job drafting and in free agency. So I get the draw of moving back and getting those extra picks. But if I'm the Patriots, I don't pass up one of those 3 quarterbacks at the top of the draft, because I think you just need to address that position at some point. You don't want to be drafting third every single year. Try to draft a quarterback.
Which team is most likely to move up, do you think?
I think the Vikings, just because, look, there's a reason they got that second first-round pick. I mean, it's just there's – I think it was with the Titans they traded. Maybe it was somebody else. I can't even remember. Texans, I think it was. Yeah. I always get confused, dude, the Houston thing. But
you got so much information going through your mind. You're on overload right now, Frank. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about Danny Hurley's guards. It's one of those. It's one of those things where obviously Minnesota, they didn't just randomly get another first-round pick in mid-March just to do it. I think that they are looking at somebody in the draft, but you can't just do it now. You got to make sure the guy you really want is on the board, so that's going to take a while, so they haven't officially made the move. But I assume they made that trade with a side deal to say, all right, if our guy is there at 4, we're going to trade these 2 picks for you, and that's been agreed upon. So I think they're just. I mean, I'd be shocked if the Minnesota Vikings don't move up in the draft to take a quarterback.
We're talking with Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, here on Rip City Mornings. I was curious your take on this influx of cash that we're seeing from college football now, and the impact it's going to have on the basketball programs. The SEC, of course, money rich in football. They've had a good showing in the NCAA tournament. I'm just wondering long term if these programs that are part of these power conferences now where the football money's so good, if we're going to see the side benefit of these basketball programs growing like we're seeing in the SEC and their show in the tournament this year.
Yeah, and I think the SEC is really interesting because they just didn't – it was all football schools, right? And that's why, honestly, that's why John Calipari was posting these unbelievable records. Not that they weren't getting talent or anything, but all of a sudden the SEC decided, you know what, you're right. You're totally right on this track. It's like we got all this money. why don't we invest a little bit in basketball? Basketball's fun too. We can turn that into a big time sport. And they started investing in their coaches, the Bruce Pearls of the world and Nate Oates, and getting really, really good top end coaches. And all of a sudden, for Kentucky, the one basketball school in the SEC, life wasn't so easy anymore because you have all these great coaches coming in and teams investing in the programs. So I do think, you do wonder if it's going to create this huge gap between, the haves and have-nots, and we're basically moving to this. Almost, it's going to be two conferences at some point. It's going to be almost the AFC and the NFC of the college football world, and that trickles down to basketball. But yeah, I think when you do see this money coming in for football, and all of a sudden you realize that, hey, we can compete in both of these sports. I mean, usually, I'm a University of Wisconsin alum, and I was always proud of the fact that for a long time we were one of the few schools that really was good in both. Not great, but good in both. Because you usually pick one or the other. You're Kansas, you pick basketball. You're Alabama, and you pick football. Now you're seeing more schools saying, oh, why not be good in both? And I think the SEC is the prime example of that, where you see quote-unquote football schools, Alabama, Tennessee made a deep run this year in the NCAA tournament. You're seeing these traditional football schools who are investing in basketball because why not be good in both? I mean, it used to be pretty rare, but now it's becoming, I think, more common and going to be more common to see teams investing money into both of those programs.
One quick NBA question for you, Frank. We love Denver in the West, and Boston's obviously dominating the East. Who do you see, which team is out there that you think might threaten those two teams the most?
The one team I keep coming back to is Oklahoma City, and maybe they're a year away, but, man, SGA is so good. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, you saw him hit that game tying. I mean, he is just so smooth, and if Joker wasn't so dominant, I mean, I think he'd be your MVP, and Chet Holmgren is a heck of a player, and they got all these other pieces. I love that Oklahoma City team, and they might be a year away, but I watched them. I went to Oklahoma City, Denver a couple months ago, expected to see this great game, right? These two, and Oklahoma City just blew Denver off the court. You can go back and look. They won by about 25. They just killed them in the second half. And so maybe that's just sticking in my mind, seeing them in person that way, just dominate the Nuggets. But I think that they can really give anybody a hard time in the playoffs. And you usually see the NBA is usually a progression, right? If you're a really, really young team, you need to take your lumps in the playoffs a couple of years before you really figure it out. But that team is so talented and so good, and SGA is such a elite player. I could see them breaking through already, but I really don't see anybody beating the Celtics. Like it pains me as a Bucks fan. I mean, I wanted that team to be what the Celtics are, but the Celtics are just remarkable. I think if the Celtics, as long as they stay healthy, because that's such a big part of it, and Porzingis has always been hurt, and you don't know if he's going to make it through the playoffs. But if that team stays healthy, it doesn't win a championship. That's a pretty major failure for them. That is a team that is set to win a championship, and I think anything less for them is just it's kind of I hate to say it, like making a finals and losing shouldn't be a disappointing season, but I think it would be for the Celtics this year. They're that good.
All right, he's on X at Yahoo Schwab. He's with Yahoo Sports. Hey Frank, we appreciate the time and good luck getting through all your thoughts about the UConn guards so you can focus on the NFL draft that's now a month and away.
I'll try to make that work. I definitely will.
All right. Thanks, buddy. We appreciate it. There's Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports here on Rip City Mornings.
Good stuff always from Frank.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by the draft.
Can you imagine 5 quarterbacks taken that early?
The thought of Denver or Minnesota, I mean, giving up a haul to move up and take a QB, like you have that you must believe that whatever player you're going after is the guy.
Yeah.
Whether it's May or it's JJ or whoever, because I do believe that Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels will be the first 2 guys taken. I'm almost convinced of that. But after that, like, I don't know. It's a crapshoot. Like, I'm not even secure on taking Bo Nix at 12 because I'm not convinced he's a first-round quarterback.
Why do you say that? What about him do you not like?
Size, arm strength on the deep balls, which were fluttering, especially in the Senior Bowl. His difficulty of being able to operate in a muddy pocket, which we saw in the Senior Bowl, and the fact that his dominance over the last 2 years came against mostly subpar competition. That's concerning to me. And I'm concerned about any quarterback that comes out of a college system where you're not running pro style sets. How does it translate? That's concerning. JJ McCarthy, I think Frank nailed it. The NFL, he's not on a meteoric rise. What's happening is that the NFL, now you're starting to find out what the NFL teams are thinking. They've always loved him.
Uh-huh.
But what
Took
you
a
got
while to-
before was the hype in fan bases and the media narrative was never on McCarthy. But the NFL execs, the scouts, the GMs, they've loved McCarthy from day one.
Mhm.
And so I don't know what McCarthy's going to be. I just know that NFL personnel love him because of the way he operates, the way he runs an NFL system, which he did at Michigan. He only threw 22 touchdown passes last year. I mean, he didn't put up big numbers, but he didn't have to.
No,
But
he didn't.
in terms of being able to, get your players in position, make sure the right protections are called, his third down passing, he does all the things you want to see as an NFL quarterback. But we'll get to the draft coming up at, let's see here. We're going to get to that a little bit later. I think at 8:20. We'll focus in on the draft because I am really intrigued by the quarterbacks. We'll come back. We got to talk about Ohtani with Godfather because we have not. He's been gone and he left, and then this scandal hit. We'll talk about it next. All right, Godfather, let's dig into this Shohei Ohtani situation. You left town right when the news broke.
Yeah, I did.
So I'll give the quick version to get everyone up to date. So basically what happened is that his longtime friend and interpreter, I think it's Ipi Mizuhara, at some time he ran into this dude at a poker game down in San Diego who turned out to be this Bauer, who was the illegal bookmaker in Southern California. And according to what he originally told, I think it's Tish Anderson, the investigative reporter for ESPN, in the 90-minute sit-down. What he was doing sitting down with an investigative reporter for 90 minutes, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Whoever authorized that, was it the NCAA guy who set the three-point line at Moda Center?
Same guy. Yeah.
Same guy. So he ends up sitting down with Tish Anderson to explain the situation, because what happened is ESPN, I listened to an interview with Tish, they found out, I think it was back in January, they were working on this story with this illegal bookmaker, and Shohei's name popped up because there were a series of $500,000 transfers, wire transfers to this bookmaker who's being investigated by the feds. So the feds are investigating this guy. They bust him, raid his crib, and start going through all of his information. That's when they discover Shohei Ohtani's name pop up, because he was the one sending the payments to the bookmaker. So they sit down with the interpreter, and he lays out the scenario of, I met this guy, I started placing bets, I got in over my head, I went to Shohei, he was upset but agreed to help me out. So the investigative reporter goes back to Ohtani's team and starts to follow up on some of the details that came out in that 90-minute sit-down with the interpreter. And then all of a sudden, that's when the story changed. Ohtani had no idea what was going on. He was surprised, and turns out that the interpreter had illegally accessed his accounts and stolen $4.5 million. And the latest I heard from Tish is that at least 4.5. That's all they have right now. They know it's at least 4.5. It could be more, but it's definitely 4.5. So I found it odd that the story shifted in such a very short period of time from Ohtani was helping me pay off a debt that I accumulated to I had no idea about it. The interpreter stole $4.5 million from me. And then this past week, the thing that popped up that was odd is Tish has been trying to reach out to the team to find out which agencies investigating the alleged theft.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is grand larceny when you steal that
Big
kind of
money. They have no answer. No one seems to know which agency is investigating the theft of Mizuhara. So, and then out of the blue, I had Brandon Lang on, handicapper, and to talk tournament, and he offered up, and I've had him on twice to talk to him. Out of the blue, he's like, oh, by the way, and he brought up Ohtani. He said, my buddy was playing around a golf down in L.A. with the illegal bookmaker Boyer, and my friend asked him, who's your number one client? He's like, oh, Ohtani.
Whoa.
And
He said this on the radio.
Yes.
Brandon Lang did.
He did. He said,
Wow.
Ohtani is my number one client. And Lang said he wasn't betting on baseball, it was mostly soccer, big money on soccer. And he utilized his interpreter because Ohtani doesn't speak English. So like a lot of people do, powerful people, they use other people to kind of run their business for them, right? So according to Lang, the interpreter was placing all of the wagers with this illegal bookmaker in Southern California based on the games that Ohtani wanted to play. So,
and Ohtani was probably smart enough at least to know he shouldn't be betting under his own name. Have somebody else place the bets for you.
Well,
right?
exactly. A lot of people have asked, like, well, why would Ohtani go through an illegal bookmaker instead of just going to Vegas or using an app? And for a couple of reasons. One, maybe Ohtani doesn't want people to know that he likes to get down on soccer or any sport, right? Especially for large sums. Some guys just don't want their business being on the public eye. Two, he may not have known that this bookmaker in SoCal was illegal. You know, his interpreter could have just said, "I got a guy. I can place bets."
Right.
That's quite possible. And there you go. And plus, you can place bigger wagers through an illegal bookmaker than you can through legitimate means.
Sure.
And you can do it without anyone knowing, of course, unless the feds raid the person's house and then your name pops up because of various wire transfers. So I've really narrowed it down to a few different possibilities, Godfather, and I want your thoughts. One, maybe Ohtani's telling the truth and his interpreter defrauded him out of the money. because he has a gambling problem. And as a gambling addict or former addict myself, gamblers cannot be trusted. Especially when it comes to large sums of money, they cannot be trusted, and they do steal. It could be a situation where his interpreter did place the bets, get himself into trouble, went to Ohtani for help. He agreed to help him. And then once the team discussed the situation, they realized, like, we're involved with someone illegal here. We got to pivot. Let's throw the interpreter under the bus and keep your name clear. That's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's possible that Ohtani had full knowledge of what was going on, wanted to place the bets, and was just using his interpreter to do that action for him and to keep himself clear so he could have plausible deniability. Which of the three do you think is the most likely scenario based on your experience covering sports?
Well, particularly in light of what I just heard about what was said on your program in my absence. And I've always kind of suspected it was Ohtani placing the bets. There's something about athletes, they like betting on stuff. I mean, it's rampant.
It's competition, it's action, it's the buzz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do it. I mean, these guys love betting football games, basketball games. Most of them, I think, are smart enough not to bet on their own sport.
Yeah.
But they bet. They do.
All right. I'll get a couple more thoughts on Ohtani when we come back. That's Dwight. I'm Chad. We're in for Justin Myers, who's going to be back in his normal position tomorrow morning.
Thank goodness.
I was very happy to see some pictures. I saw Justin posting from wherever he's at, some beautiful location. Seems like he's having a good time at everyone else's expense, so at least there's that. Good for you, Justin. All right, Rip City Mornings. Brendan, Chad, Dwight with you here on this Monday. All right, it's now 8 o'clock. What's going on, my friends? The Final Four is now set up for us. It's coming up on Saturday down in the desert, Glendale, Arizona. We got NC State and Purdue, an 11 seed against a 1, followed by UConn and Bama, a 1 against a 4. Purdue is an 8.5-point favorite. UConn, 11.5-point favorite. Women's tournament continues tonight. Big showdown at 4, LSU and Iowa. And then UConn and USC will lock horns at Moda Center. According to the NCAA, they will have the three-point lines fixed by the game tonight. Both are on ESPN. Red Sox topped the Mariners yesterday 5-1. They open a set at T-Mobile Park tonight. First pitch against the Guardians at 6:40. Trailblazers continue their 7-game road trip. In Orlando tonight, tip at 4, game day at 1:30 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Tamani Kamara is out the rest of the year with a cracked rib. More of the Rip City Mornings with Dwight and Shaq coming at you right now.
Yeah.
All right, Who Won the Weekend is coming up here in a couple of minutes. Let's continue our thoughts here on Ohtani. How do you expect baseball to proceed with this investigation? From my understanding, this investigation is going to take some time because the feds are just now in the beginning stages of their process, and baseball is probably in no hurry to get to the bottom.
Well, as a matter of fact, I just received word that baseball is going to bring in the NCAA investigators to take care of this chat. So we should be hearing something in, 2 or 3 years, probably.
I mean, Ohtani's he's one of the most popular athletes on the globe.
They can't lose him. They can't. They can't suspend him. They can't do anything.
No.
He's bulletproof.
The only way that he would be in the crosshairs here, in my estimation, is if he was betting on baseball.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. Outside of that, I don't think Major League Baseball really cares too much about him placing bets through an illegal bookmaker. You're allowed to bet on other sports as a Major League Baseball player legally.
Yeah. Well, they also have a commissioner in office right now in baseball that's the most business-minded commissioner ever. Everything he's done has been to create more business. You know, they got advertisements everywhere. He's really in the owner's pocket in terms of increasing revenue. So the last thing he's going to do is take away the biggest earning potential that league has.
Yeah, in fact, I don't want Ohtani to be suspended. I don't want him to get in trouble. I want to watch him play. In fact, I think the commissioner needs to come out and declare him safe now. We've concluded our investigation. Ohtani had no wrongdoing. It's all Mizuhara. Yeah. Whatever it takes to get him right. He's only batting .273 through the first week of the season.
Rough start.
We need Ohtani to get off. Mookie Betts is on fire. I need Freeman, Betts, and Ohtani to get hot all at the same time just to see what that would look like. Yeah. I think where people – it's not the same as Pete Rose. As long as Ohtani was not betting on baseball, it's not the same as Pete. People always want to bring Pete Rose's name into it. Betting on other sports or betting on soccer is not the same as betting on baseball.
Well, and Pete Rose is a bad guy who many people in baseball hated with a passion because of the way he was.
Yeah.
And so they were going to go hard on him no matter what.
Yeah.
This guy, Ohtani, is a different story. Very likable, very, very respected in the game.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen to him, right?
By the way, I don't believe for a minute that he doesn't speak English. They said the same thing about Ichiro was still using an interpreter in his last season in the league.
You think that's just done on purpose as a layer of protection?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a filter. You know, it's like, I don't understand, no.
I should have thought about that years ago when I got in the biz. I could use my interpreter to form a blockade when my boss wants to talk to me about the show.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand what he was saying. It's a great – dude, it's perfect for him right now. If he was the one placing the bets, how could I have done that? I didn't place any bets. It was my interpreter.
Yeah.
And how could I communicate with the bookmaker? I don't speak English. It's the perfect defense.
Well, your interpreter is the one that's making the bets.
I know, but
for you.
But how are they going to make that connection?
Yeah, I know, especially when the interpreter is willing to take the bullet. That's the big thing here, is he seems more than willing to go ahead and take the punishment for this because, as you know, I know, and everybody else knows, he's going to be very well rewarded for doing so.
very well rewarded. The
Yeah.
problem is he comes from a culture where his name is now going to be shamed, and that's
Yeah.
going to be tough for him to get over.
Mhm.
So what do you think is the most likely? So you
He'll
think
stay
Ohtani?
in America, by the way, where it won't matter at all, because here in this country, he'll become an anti-hero to a degree.
He should join Congress. He would fit right in.
Touche, Chad.
He would run for city council in Portland, if nothing else. I mean,
Yeah, just be a congressman. They lie out of their ass all the time.
Yeah.
And they steal money all the time.
yeah, they're crooked.
Big time.
Yeah, they're stealing our money as we speak.
So you think the most likely scenario is that Ohtani was having his interpreter place bets for him?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know athletes. I've been around them, and I know they love the action. They love the wagers. They do. They talk about it all the time. And they talk about, I had the 49ers last week, or I had so-and-so this week. And those guys, can you imagine if you were as wealthy as those guys? I would probably gamble knowing it doesn't matter. I could lose all kinds of money. I could lose $4.5 million. It wouldn't even put a dent in my bank account.
It wouldn't matter.
No. So that changes a lot too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no problem losing money. Well, gambling's not really even gambling if you don't care if you lose.
If you have Ohtani money, I don't know if you could gamble your fortune away.
No, it'd be impossible.
He's got so much money that he could have a serious gambling problem. Charles Barkley used to make that case all the time. He's like, yeah, I gamble, but I've got money to cover all my debts.
I can afford to lose.
And I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean you don't have a gambling problem, but yes, you do have the money to cover your debts.
Yeah. I gamble, I lose, no problem.
And of course, if I would have won more bets, I wouldn't have a gambling problem. I'd be a genius.
Yeah.
Look at that guy, man. He's a bigwig. Oh, it's crazy. But I don't care. I just want to watch the Dodgers with that lineup. It's so amazing. It's like, like Ohtani didn't have it going last night. So really the top three guys in the order didn't. So what do we do? Well, we'll just lean on Teoscar Hernandez. And then Max Muncy, back-to-back bombs, game over.
Yeah.
That's how easy it is for them. Sick lineup. And the Mariners may have the best rotation in baseball, and they still can't get run support.
Yeah, score.
All right, let's do it. Let's get to who won the weekend. All right, Brendan, who are the options?
Yeah, let's go ahead and fire up option number one. I think we got to start with DJ Burns from the NC State Wolfpack. Had himself a pretty big weekend.
I was excited to watch him play. I would imagine that most people would put DJ Burns at the top of their list because he took out Duke, and he was enjoying it
That's a
along the
joy.
way.
It's funny how the tournament creates these people. Did you know DJ Burns before the tournament?
No,
I didn't either.
No.
but you made the perfect comparison. Zach Randolph.
Yeah, only bigger. He's bigger than Zach was. He is a big dude, that guy, man. But same kind of left-handed post game, and he makes that 10 to 12-foot jump shot. And he knows how to push his way in, get position, and then he knows how to score inside. He's something. And he's quick on his feet, man.
He's got 25 pounds on Zach, Dwight.
Oh, yeah. I would say at least.
At least.
Somebody's not putting his real weight down. What are they listing him at? Come on. What are they saying he is?
They've got him listed at 6'9", 275. Do you buy that?
No, I think he's 3
Does
bills.
he weigh less than Nurkic, Jokic? All those guys are about 300 pounds in the NBA.
He's 3 bills. Yeah, he is.
He's
Big
got
boy.
a hefty midsection.
Yes, he's
But
big.
Zach Randolph carved out a beautiful NBA career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And after he left Portland, he took some LBs off. You know, he got down a little bit.
He's a
and-
legend in Memphis now. He was a great player
They
for
love
the
him in
Grizzlies.
Memphis. Yeah.
Yeah, Zach Randolph, very good player. And you're right. I can see that with DJ Burns. All right, who's next up on the list?
Yeah, next up, we're going to stick with college basketball and go Zach Edey, obviously taking Purdue to the Final Four. Bit of a redemption tour from last year's first-round exit.
He is.
He was terrific. He's been dominating competition in the tournament. His size and his skill on the block, there's just no one that can match him.
Yeah, in college, too, they're able to hide him defensively, put him in his zone, or just mix and match with him enough to get away with it, which they won't be able to do in the NBA. But he's got a great touch inside. He is the low post kind of scorer that people wish Drew Timme was. Drew Timme was nothing like this guy. And he's so big that little jump hook he throws in, you can't get to it. Now, they will get to it in the NBA, but in college, there's nobody blocking that shot.
Yeah, I still think Zach Edey's going to be – I just can't see him translating to the NBA. I just don't see it at all.
I think he'll be on a roster. But
in 4 tournament games, fellas, he's averaging 30 points, 16 rebounds, and shooting 65% from the floor.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good. not too shabby. But, yeah, I've never seen, and one of the first things I asked you guys this morning was I've never seen more polarized. Like, I feel like it's at its peak where a good player in college does not translate to necessarily a high drafted prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And I joked with you guys, if this was 2000, where would DJ Burns and Zach Edey be going in the draft?
Yeah. No, I told Chad that pre-3-point field goal, that guy's for sure a number 1 pick. You needed guys like that. You had to have, because there's only 2s, and the closer you get to the basket, the better chance you have of winning with 2s.
But, heck, even Rudy Gobert moves better than Zach Edey.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
That's true. Let's see. Up next on Who Won the Weekend, I'm hoping you guys caught on to this story. Minnesota Timberwolves owner Glenn Taylor might have won the weekend.
Yeah.
Very interesting where now all of a sudden Alex Rodriguez is out because he couldn't secure the funding to be able to make the payments that were necessary to acquire the Timberwolves and the Lynx. And from my understanding here, this is probably a situation where it's a win for Glenn because as this process has played out, his franchise value has skyrocketed. So instead of being worth $1.5 billion, now we're probably talking $2.5 billion.
Yeah.
And so why would you want to sit around and wait for that guy to finish making his payments when you can step out, violation of the agreement, and then you can resell your team at a higher price?
Well, they're even arguing that they weren't late. There seems to be some argument about that. But Glenn Taylor is beloved in Minnesota, and he's suffered through all those bad seasons with his team, and now they have a chance to do something. I don't blame him at all for wanting to be a part of a winner finally.
What else we got?
Yeah, last one on the deck, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Measuring tapes at Moda Center definitely won the weekend.
That's the biggest loser. The NCAA is the biggest loser of the weekend. We should have done loser of the weekend, NCAA, for embarrassing themselves by not having the 3-point lines measured out correctly at Moda Center.
Well, and we got to wash the stink off Portland, too, because Portland is being – somehow people are saying, oh, Portland screwed something up again, or the Trailblazers screwed something up again. All of it on the NCAA, all of it.
They come in, take over the building. All is on them to get their court and everything set up the way they want.
They bring the floor. The floor is theirs. It doesn't belong to Moda Center.
Yeah. Portland does well enough on its own creating issues that people can talk about.
Yeah.
We don't need the NCAA's problems. Well, of those choices, all very good ones by Brendan, I've got to give a tip of the cap to DJ Burns.
Me too.
He took out Duke, the most hated team in America, and was celebrating down the stretch. And they're the one team, an 11 seed. There's 2 1s, a 4, and then you got NC State as an 11. And they get the job done against Duke. That's awesome.
And his personality has really won people over. He's a fun guy to watch play. He enjoys playing. He's having a good time out there, and people love to see that.
Yeah. I'm pulling for NC State now.
Are you?
Yeah, I want to see him in that title game. I just think that when you look at the teams that are there, I don't care if it's Purdue or whoever, like UConn's the best by far.
Yeah, I just don't see anybody beating him.
And my question is, if Zach Edey gets a chance to play UConn, well, the problem is that they'll neutralize Edey to a degree. Can his teammates make enough shots to give him the support necessary?
And they have occasionally done that. I mean, you know, it's just it's the 3-point field goals. They're in and out. You never know.
First Take's getting ready to do a little feature on Kim Mulkey.
Oh, God. Let's just go directly to that. You would love
Did we find Chad's second celebrity crush?
Is she a celebrity?
I mean, kind of.
Well, she is in your mind.
It's kind of like it's the way I look. It's similar to the way I look at Cher, right? Like when Cher walks on stage, she is in control, and I like that. There's something that's attractive about that power.
Would you let her tie you up?
I would do whatever she told me to
I figured.
do. I mean, it's yes, coach.
You're
Yes,
so honest. I love that.
yes. There's some people
Bring
you
it
don't
on.
argue with. Well, I'm not going to. Who am I to argue with her? You got to respect the coach.
Yeah, I guess.
Do this, okay? You know, if you whatever you say. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We'll come back. We'll focus in on the NFL draft with the QBs and take a look at what's going to happen. Draft right around the corner, coming up at the end of April. All right, Godfather, I'm excited about the NFL draft. I think we're going to have 4 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks for the first time in the history of the draft. I truly believe that. I think, number one, you've got Chicago at number 1, courtesy of their deal with Carolina. Caleb Williams is going to go number 1, as he should, because he's the best prospect in the draft. Washington at number 2, I am now settled in that they're going to take Jaden Daniels. Just look at who their offensive coordinator is. Cliff Kingsbury, he's going to run the air raid. It would seem that Jaden Daniels, with his skill set, would be the best to run that offense. Then you've got New England at number 3. I agree with Frank that they could trade out because their roster is probably the worst in the NFL, and they need to add several pieces. But how often do you have a chance to pick one of the top quarterbacks in the draft that high up?
You got to take the quarterback.
So whether it's Drake May or J.J. McCarthy, take your guy. And then at number 4, that's where I think Minnesota will move up and make the deal. They went out and acquired that second first-round pick from Houston for a reason, and it wasn't because they wanted to take a tight end or some defensive tackle at the end of the first round. They're going to use that ammunition to move up. I think Denver wants to move up too. I think J.J. McCarthy would be the ultimate fantasy for Sean Payton in terms of the way he wants to operate his offense and the way he wants a guy to come in and do what he wants him to do. I think J.J. McCarthy's his guy. But I think when the negotiations start and Denver realizes what they're going to have to give up to get to that point to get McCarthy, they're going to bow out. And I think it will be Minnesota with their ammunition to move up and get him. They went out and got that first-round pick right after they lost Kirk Cousins to Atlanta.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? They know, like we know, they need a quarterback. And it's actually a great spot for McCarthy or May if they end up in Minnesota because they went out and got Sam Darnold, and they gave him enough money to where you know he's going to start this year. They're not going to rush the rookie quarterback onto the field. He'll have time to sit back and develop and learn, and then when you put that young guy on the field, he'll be ready to go, which is great. And I think that's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what's fascinating, and Jim Harbaugh's been hard at work talking about McCarthy, how it's the best pro day he's ever seen, best quarterback I've ever seen. Like, he's really hyping him up because I think what Jim Harbaugh wants is to get all 4 teams in front of him to take quarterbacks, and then he'll be sitting there at number 5 to take Marvin Harrison Jr., the best receiver by far in the draft class, to pair up with his young quarterback in Justin Herbert. And from what I'm hearing from the scouts, Marvin Harrison's like the perfect receiver because he runs fast with pads on, but he runs, as I heard, exquisite routes.
Yeah.
He'd be perfect. So I think you're going to have quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then after that, the Giants at 6, I think, are a bit of a wild card. They could take a quarterback when
they need one.
When they realize that maybe we don't want to stick with Daniel Jones much longer. And then Denver's sitting there at 12. I guess Denver could take Bo Nix. They could trade back knowing that Nix might be available later in the first or early in the second. And I think Michael Penix is probably destined to be more of a third-round type quarterback because of the injury history, which is a concern. Even if the medicals show up clean at the combine, you're still worried about the past injuries and how that's going to relate to NFL punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, like we saw in the title game, like a lot of quarterbacks that aren't great and do require the guys around them to play well. How does that translate to the NFL in terms of being able to stand there in a muddy pocket, delivering the football on time and on target? And then with Bo Nix, like I've said before, and I think this goes with anyone, if you believe that Bo Nix is your franchise quarterback of the future, then take him at 12.
Mm-hmm.
If you think that J.J. McCarthy is going to transform your franchise, use whatever draft picks are necessary to move up and get him. But you better make sure that's the right guy because if you miss on the pick, you're effed.
Sean Payton, though, I would believe is the kind of coach that would believe that before he took a guy. I don't think he would take a guy, certainly at 12, if he wasn't absolutely certain.
Yeah, you're not going to take a flyer on a quarterback at 12.
Yeah.
We're taking him because we believe this is the guy to lead our franchise into the future.
And if he is that guy, getting him at 12 is a bargain.
What I do like about Bo Nix, you're right, getting a franchise quarterback at 12, yeah, it's beautiful.
And the 5th one taken, quite possibly, would be amazing.
Yeah. But you and I both know that if there's 5 guys that go in the first round, not all 5 are going to hit.
Oh, for sure. But like Frank said, it doesn't mean number 5 won't, and it doesn't mean number 1 will. You just don't know.
Yeah. I would say of the quarterbacks that I'm most certain of, I would be stunned if Caleb Williams does not turn out to be a star. literally stunned. And I think he's going to a good situation. I know a lot of people think Chicago's, a little bit of a joke, but they won 7 games last year. Their roster is much better than a lot of other teams. They're picking at number 1 because of a trade they made with Carolina, not because they're the worst team in the NFL. There's a difference. I think it's a good situation for Caleb Williams, and I think he's going to excel and become great, and he'll play and start from day one. With everyone else, I have question marks. Like, I love Jaden Daniels, the quarterback. I don't love Jaden Daniels, the slender frame, and how that may hold up in the NFL.
Yeah.
Drake May, his loopy delivery, I'm not so certain about. I have no idea. With J.J. McCarthy, like, I just never saw him. When we watch USC games, every time you watch a USC game, Caleb Williams jumped out at you in terms of like, wow, I can't believe he made that play or that throw, and he had to carry the team. It was eye-popping. With J.J. McCarthy, he never stood out when you watch Michigan because he was never in a situation where he had to stand out and lead his team.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he can't do it. I never saw it, right?
You'd like to see it at least once, right?
Yeah. But I also know that, there are other quarterbacks that have been taken in the draft that people didn't pay attention to, but because of the way they process, how accurate they throw the football, how smart they are, the way they know how to operate an NFL-style system, they can excel. And so I would like to see a guy like J.J. McCarthy work with a coach like Sean Payton to see what he could become in the NFL.
I kind of look at McCarthy's situation similar to Neil Lomax when he was in high school. He went to Lake Oswego, and they had a really good program. They never threw the ball. They ran the ball constantly. And you look back, and you got Neil Lomax, who becomes a Pro Bowl quarterback, had his career cut short because of injury, but was an outstanding NFL quarterback. How does he end up at Portland State? I mean, this is ridiculous. Why wasn't he? Well, because no one really saw him. Mouse Davis saw him. They saw him in the Shrine game as an all-star. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, this guy can throw the ball a little bit.
So I'm wondering if McCarthy, in the right system, getting a chance to showcase what he can do with his arm, where all of a sudden you're going to be like, wow, this guy can play.
He's big, strong, tough, pretty smart.
He was a product of the way Jim Harbaugh wants to play football. And this is what we're going to see. And there'll be fans that will get irritated by it because when the Chargers start playing football this year, you're going to notice that Justin Herbert's not in a lot of duress because they're going to line him up under center. They're going to run the football with a desire to physically maul you. They're going to be a big, strong football team, and they're not going to ask him to do it every game.
There's not going to be as many 300-yard passing games for him.
I know, but the result will be wins because Harbaugh's got a system that has been proven to have success. There'll be times where Herbert will have to carry the team based on the way the game is being played or the way it plays out, and that's fine. He can do that. But most of the time, they're going to try and take control by mauling you at the line of scrimmage, running the football, and having balance.
Well, my pet peeve all last year was they weren't protecting him, a valuable resource, and they couldn't protect him. He'll be protected this year. You can bet on that.
Yeah. I love what Harbaugh said at the owners' meetings last week where the offensive line is the most important unit on a football team because everyone else is relying upon the offensive line. The quarterback needs the offensive line, the running backs, the receivers. It all starts right there. And Harbaugh understands that, and he's going to put all of his resources into building an offensive line to make sure that everything functions. And he said even the defense benefits from a great offensive line because do you feel more rested after an 8-minute drive?
Yeah, keeps them off the field.
Yeah, so, you're going to notice that. So maybe it's McCarthy who's just going to show that, you know what, I can do it with my arm. I just haven't been in a situation where I've had to do it that way. And that says a lot about a quarterback that he can just accept the system and what it takes to win. I can make plays like he did against Alabama and Washington when I have to, but if we're going to run the football, I'm committed to the game plan because that's what's going to help us win. Sometimes a quarterback doesn't have to make all the big plays, just understanding who he's got around him and getting the ball in their hands and allow him to do what they do, right? Smart. So, but with Bo Nix, if he ends up in Denver working with Sean Payton, the reason why the Broncos have been such a mess over the last decade since Manning left is that they didn't have the structure in place with the buffoons they had at head coach to be able to develop a quarterback. So even if they would have drafted Josh Allen when they had a chance to draft Josh Allen instead of taking the defensive lineman, what you could do is you put a system into place to develop your quarterback because they've got, a system now with coaches where you can develop and bring a guy along and then get him on the field when he's ready to play. And Sean Payton's got full power and he's got time on his side, right? He doesn't have to win right away. So there's no pressure to throw the quarterback out there. So at least now you got the structure in place to develop a guy. So if Nix winds up in Denver, that very well could be the best spot for him because he'll get the best coaching necessary to where when he is ready to play, he'll make the most of it.
And if you kept Nix off the field most of this year, you could tank and come back with pretty good picks the following year and be pretty good long term. And he's got a long term contract. But will he be willing, Chad, to take the losses necessary to do that?
Yeah. I think Payton would be willing to start the players that would lead to more losses, but some coaches, they just can't bow out, I would be okay if the Broncos wanted to tank for Shador because I like him coming out. He'll be the best quarterback in the draft next year, but guys like Sean Payton, they're just too good. They're going to win a couple of games they shouldn't win because they're going to out-scheme the coach that they're up against. There are a lot of dumb coaches in the NFL. Sean Payton's not one of those guys.
Yeah.
So, but I like Bo Nix, his processing, smarts. Like his makeup is really good. But the NFL is a different beast, right? I mean, Scoot Henderson's noticing that too. You dominate the G League, and all of a sudden you get on the NBA floor, and the 4s and the 5s move a lot different in the NBA and the G League, and all of a sudden those windows aren't quite the same, right?
Yep.
Like Bo Nix at Oregon, when you're basically have better talent than most of the teams you line up against, your receivers are a little bit more open. You have great protection.
Yeah, but you made a great point about the Ducks. Their schedules over the last few years, they have not played, and the Pac-12 until this year, they haven't played a lot of really tough teams.
No. I mean, really, this year, Bo Nix, I mean, the game they played at Utah wasn't what it was supposed to be because the injuries on one side were so significant. They played Washington twice. Those are really the two big games.
Yeah, and they lost them both.
Yeah. Knicks played well in both games, but they didn't win. But those are really the two toughest games in terms of competition. Really, it's been the Washington games the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you step on the field, and the other teams you're playing against, the talent gap is significant. So it's easier for a guy to go out and make, the throws are easier, right? Simple reads, easy throws, because guys are wide open.
Most of the games they played, even Otani's interpreter could have won those bets just by giving the points.
He obviously wasn't a very good gambler.
Oh, God, how bad? I think I texted you something. How bad a gambler are you to lose that kind of money? Well, you have to be making pretty large bets to begin with, right? A lot of bookies wouldn't even take bets that big.
That's my theory on most gamblers, that most of them are bad. Most gamblers are not good.
Well, it's set up for you to lose, right?
And the more a guy tells me he's winning, the more I believe he's losing.
Yeah.
I went through it. It's hard to win at gambling. Very difficult. That's why the few sharps who do make a living gambling, that's just wild to me.
But aren't they, the guys that do it are able to understand that you're only going to win 57% of the time. You're going to take your losses, but you have to just grind through it. I think cards are that way. I mean, you're not going to win 80% of your bets or even 75% of them. You got to be willing to accept the fact that you're going to take a lot of losses, but you got to, I think it's a tough deal.
And the pros are not betting teams. They're looking strictly at a number.
Right.
And they're betting a number. So there's no emotion involved for these gamblers. They're looking at the number, and they're taking the number that they think is wrong, and they're betting whatever team that is to be able to get that value there. They don't care about the matchup. They're not worried about the quarterback matchup or any of that stuff. They're just looking at the number based on their formula that they've come up with.
Yeah, you said formula. I was going to say a lot of them have a system of some sort, right? Where a road underdog getting this many points, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Let me give you an example. The pro gambler does not ever say anything like, well, I think this team's really due, or, this team's lost 5 straight. They're probably going to get a win this weekend, or this team tends to play really well at home. I think they're going to bounce back. None of that nonsense pops out. It's all about the number and the value that they're betting on. I mean, if you hear the logic for most people, and I fall victim to this too when we're talking about games, like anytime I hear someone say this team's due, I'm like, really? Due? What does that mean? Due? They're due for what? I mean, lost 4 straight games because they played like garbage. What leads you to believe that that's suddenly going to change this weekend?
Because they're due.
Yeah. Or a team that's on fire. They've won 10 straight. Well, they're due for a loss. Really? Because they're playing great ball right now. How do you know this 10-game winning streak's not going to become 20? It's just funny to me. So, yeah. Mizuhara, whoever was placing the bets, Ohtani or Mizuhara, not very good. Taking a couple of big losses there.
When you were in your wild wagering days, did you have a system or did you just bet on teams you liked, or what did you do?
Well, I relied on other people that I thought had a system for information. That didn't work well. When I picked games myself, that didn't work well. There were a couple of times based on teams I was really familiar with, knowing what situations they were weak in and strong in, that I could, profit on. But the problem is I couldn't just let that win be good enough. I wanted more. And then the more games you play, it increases the likelihood you're going to go down in flames.
Yeah.
And then when you lose and lose royally, then you start to chase, and then you're in serious trouble. The chasing is bad. Well, I lost 3,000 here. I'll just double it up on the next game. Well, what happens when you lose that game? Well, I'm going to double up again? Well, yeah, I think I'll do that. And then you lose again. And it's an avalanche of hell is what it is. And if Mizuhara was the one placing the bets and got himself into trouble, that's how it happens. He's like, well, it's okay. I'll get it back the next bet. And then you lose that one. And then you chase and you lose that one. And before you know it, you're $1 million in the hole. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy 99% of the time, unless you have that kind of money to lose. Then it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, or
if you're Ohtani.
You get someone on the blackjack table, you're in the middle of a bad shoe, and you're like, you start to double down or increase your bets when you're in a bad shoe.
When you should just get up from the table and leave.
Get up and leave, or just reduce your bet. But then when the shoe's hot and you've won like 4 or 5 in a row, ride that streak. But then people get nervous, and then they don't,
Hard to leave a hot blackjack shoe, fellas.
That's crazy. I don't know. That whole, as soon as they changed the story, I'm like, what? Red flags.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody figured out real quick that it doesn't work that he paid off your gambling debts.
To an illegal bookmaker.
Yes, that's not going to work.
So if that was the case,
to change.
That is a likely possibility.
Yeah, don't you think that's what happened? So.
Well, let's say that I think it's possible that Ohtani was not betting himself. It is possible that Mizuhara just got himself into a hole, and he went to Ohtani and said, "Dude, I need your help."
Right. That's entirely possible.
No problem. I got you.
Yeah.
And then he goes out to share the story, trying to be honest, and then
he's
they realize
telling the truth.
He's telling the truth, but then they realize the truth is going to get Ohtani in trouble. So they're like, that's not. We got to change stories. So we're going to throw you under the bus.
Yeah.
Because you're going to. He's the sacrificial lamb because you don't want it. Why would you? You don't want the golden calf to be impacted.
Well, and he's willing to do it, like you said. I mean, he's set for life. He's going to be set for life if he takes the bullet on this one, and he knows it.
You take the bullet, your reputation is destroyed, but you're going to have millions in the bank.
And what's the worst that can happen to him, Chad? You think he's going to do time?
The interpreter?
Yeah.
No, they just go away and don't talk. They just make him. They'll basically assign him to witness protection. You just disappear and don't talk.
Really? You think?
I don't think he'll do time. Especially if there's no agency investigating the theft.
Yeah, well, that's true. if nobody's going to charge him with a crime, it's going to be hard to put him in prison. But you start stealing $4.5 million. Try knocking over a bank or an armored car or a jewelry store for even $1 million to see what it gets you. He stole $4.5 million, if we can believe their story.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Even for Ohtani, for someone to jack 4.5 from you, that's kind of a problem.
That's like Mission Impossible kind of stuff, stealing that much.
All right, when we come back, we'll step into the mailbag. You got Rip City Mornings. Always exciting. Another all-staff meeting tomorrow. I love meetings, Godfather, just like the rest of everyone out there driving to work right now.
Yeah,
How much time over the course of your career would you
God,
say have been
please.
wasted in meetings?
Yeah, wasted is the key word. How many meetings have you gone to where your name never came up? You didn't say anything. You just sat there and listened to other people talk.
The only productive meetings I can ever recall over the last 20 years have been, hey, let's meet so we can get that contract signed. Outside of that, mostly it's like, oh, gosh, this is killing me. And then what I hate most about meetings, here's the worst thing you can do, and I'll never do this if I'm going to run a meeting, if I'm ever in a position to do that, which I won't be. The whole thing at the end of the meeting where they say, we're going to open it up for questions. Do not open anything up for questions because there's always people that you work with that they just can't read the room and understand that, look, no one wants you to ask this question. We all want to get out of here, and what you're gonna do right now is you're gonna open up a can of worms, and that's gonna encourage someone just a little less likely to jump in to do it as well. And then before you know it, you waste another 20 minutes on questions that should not be asked.
When I first started at NBC, we had those meetings all the time where you go around the table. What are you working on right now?
Yeah.
So you got to quickly think of something, some fake thing that you're working on, because you're not really working on anything. You're kind of just there, you know?
Yeah.
And whatever comes your way, you'll do. But, you know, I hated those meetings. What are you working on?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, those were the same adults now that were the kids in school being like, are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Closing it out? And yeah, for sure.
And, you know, I have a few people on this staff, and I know how it works now, so I'm well aware. Like, I'll request a meeting or I'll send an email or ask people to do something that's a little outside of their norm, and then I know because I hear people, they hate it, right?
Yeah.
Well, why is he asking me to do this? I just know how the mind works. Employees don't like to be asked to do something that's out of their normal daily routine.
Yes.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. You're mine, and you'll do what I say, right?
I would say that's probably the downside. I love radio, but the time commitment in doing radio is that's the worst part. The time.
Yeah.
Meetings, people want to talk about this. I think that's why I love my boss so much. I love Rich Moore is a great boss, but him being in Seattle doesn't suck.
How do you like those online learning things you have to take periodically?
Those are the worst.
Oh,
and from what I understand, it's not just like here at iHeart, but like any type of training program.
Yeah. Well,
everyone's got to do it.
Every company
Continuing
now.
Education.
Yeah.
They're just trying to cover their ass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every company's trying to do that right now.
And every country too. You know?
Yes.
All right, let's get to the mailbag.
All right, gonna go actually open this up for Dwight right off the bat. Dwight, I'm curious from your travels down to the Amazon, what was the most eye-opening thing that you saw down there? Just something where you're like, whoa, just never.
Wow, that's a good question because there were some things, but I probably needed a little more time. But what was eye-opening? Really, I guess the Amazon River in totality, how dirty, mucky, bad it is, and how big it is. And it's a river that continues to get deeper because it's so big now. It continues to carve. Someday the Grand Canyon is going to be down there because it is still working, to make the channel bigger.
And as you mentioned, too, the canopy with all the trees and stuff, pretty remarkable.
In the rainforest,
Yeah, I was curious to hear a little bit about the water because last week when Chad and I were here on Wednesday, we talked, how do we get into talking about lakes, Chad? And you're like, no way I'm getting in any water. I can't see.
Worldwide Wednesday.
Yeah, that's right. And I was like, whew, Dwight just went and saw some of the, not necessarily, I don't know, maybe polluted too, but just like Dwight said, very dark caramel color water where like piranhas can come get you and electric eels and so
there
on
was
and so
one
forth.
outing on the ship where you could go piranha fishing.
Ooh.
And it was like, I think I'll pass. I don't mind catching one, but you're not going to get me to take it off the hook. I can tell you that.
Ooh, yeah. No, what about you, Chad? You ever had a trip that you've kind of just been like, just culturally shocked to an extent?
I did go to a lemur park in Madagascar.
You've been to Madagascar.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that counts, man.
Yeah. So I would say Madagascar was, I went to Israel, which was phenomenal, but that's a civilized country. You go to a third world country, you don't understand until you've seen it with your own eyes. I'll never forget it. I talked to a guy who was there who had visited the States. He said he got off the plane and got into the city and was blown away by the infrastructure, the roads, the buildings, and walking into a corner market and seeing produce. They don't have that over there. I was on the roadway from the airport to our location where we're going to be staying for a couple of weeks. And the roadways are a free-for-all. And it's not like they have signs.
Yeah.
It is every man for himself. And drainage ditches with sewage and stuff on the side of the road. It's total chaos. And the pollution, it was actually good for me to go and realize how great it is here when you see a third world country. But being at a lemur park and being able to see that with my own eyes is pretty dope.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, well, let's get to one more here, fellas, before we close it out. This should be good. Name one actor that plays you in a movie about your life. Go.
I'll start with you.
Well, it'd have to be Robert Redford.
I can see that.
The Natural.
Yeah, I can see that.
Who would I want? I would want Gene Hackman.
Ooh, I can see that too.
Oh.
Gene Hackman is, I don't know if he's my favorite, but he's one of my favorite actors of all time. Gene Hackman. He can do everything.
Oh, man. Really good. He's one of my favorite actors of all time.
Yeah, he's the money man. Love him to death. All right, big thanks to the Godfather. Big thanks to Brendan and all of you for listening. Justin Myers will be back tomorrow. Game day starts at 1:30 today with Chris Burkhardt. I'll be on the Trailblazers Radio Network. And then Dwight and I are back for the Rip City Drive tomorrow at 3.
Yes!